You know the whole like court thing that's going on at the moment between Rockstar and those union peoples? Out of those court cases, there are allegedly some things being discussed regarding GTA 6 Online, and basically the thing that everyone is running with now, because of the things that are being said within those court documents, people are kind of under the assumption that GTA 6 Online will have 32 players. And I'm quite curious actually what people would like kind of feel about having 32 players in like the online side of things, because GTA 6's map is obviously going to be like larger, but you really have to kind of wonder like how exactly are they going to have like 32 players on a map that large and it not feeling like really empty and stuff like that. And if they are going to do it with 32 players and they're also going down the Red Dead Online route to prevent griefing, then you really have to wonder how's that going to work. Because if you are trying to play with friends or whatever like that, or you're just trying to like, you know, visit your friend who happens to be in the same session or whatever, then you could leap from one side of the map to the other, but it will take quite a while, obviously, depending on how fast vehicles are, because that's a whole different can of worms, I suppose. GTA Online is empty, just alone with 30. Yeah, I mean, GTA Online often feels like you really have to go out of your way to go and find people in, you know, in online. Obviously, the city is different, but GTA 6's map so far seems to really like be having a lot more smaller kind of areas, smaller towns and stuff like that, which by default you would assume is going to be more populated. And as someone also pointed out in the chat, there seemingly is also like a patent that they filed in 2021, which seemingly to me is kind of expanding upon like Red Dead Online, and maybe even like the mentions and or like Kaio like dance party thing, and also like I guess the Chop Shop finale where you're putting your own like separate entity, I suppose. That's something that probably is going to make a return into GTA 6, but RDO like already has like merging sessions happening dynamically, so you would kind of assume that that's a technology that they did with RDO, but that they're now expanding upon. But one would wonder, are they going to like go further with that, where that patent apparently is also saying some things about, you know, like expanding upon that and like merging sessions, and maybe it goes as far as, you know, you're in a different area and that, you know, becomes a whole different thing. I think there's some racing games that do that apparently, but they've never really done it very successfully, if I'm correct. Yeah, that's another thing too. Like a Rockstar spokesperson said that the court things that were being said couldn't be said out loud in court because, you know, of the sensitive information and stuff like that. But then they leave it unredacted in the court documents. So at that point, it's kind of like, okay, is at this point like this outdated information, and are they exploring like 64 players? The Crew series is seamless lobby switching. Okay, but like, are there other games out there that do something similar like that, and how does it work? Because that was something that I'm like just particularly curious about, how exactly all of this stuff works, and more importantly, how it could like apply in like a GTA 6 Online. Because what I'm afraid about is that if they were to divide it within areas where, let's say you're playing with a friend or you're playing with crew, if you're going from one side of the map to the other, let's say you're in Vice City and someone else is in the Keys, and those are two separate, like, I guess, entities, if you will, that wouldn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense. Well, yeah, obviously, Fish Nerd, it's not going to be like the fucking Epstein files where you see more black lines than, you know, court document, but, you know. I saw Bruffy's video about it where he kind of like had a back and forth about it too, and like basically asked his audience, was like, hey, how would everyone feel about it? And some of the folks that made in there made a rather valid point about Bruffy thinking about, hey, I would love to host bigger sessions and bigger everything, and, you know, from a streamer perspective, but from, I guess, from a content, or like from someone who is just, you know, trying to play the game, more people might equal more griefing and yada yada. But at the same time, you know, if someone is dedicated enough to going from one side of the map to the other, then I guess griefing is going to be a thing regardless, you know, whether you have 32 players or 64. I just think like it just makes the game more interesting, but I guess there's also an argument to be had about like stability versus player count, because if you have 32 players and like you have the most stable connection possible, but if you have 64 players and it's basically an entire lag fest and every 3 seconds lobbies are timing out and whatnot, it's just not a good time to be in, really. I hope they switch to servers instead of relying on peer-to-peer like they do now. It's going to be peer-to-peer, without a doubt. Peer-to-peer in RDO was already better than it was in online. They've done improvements on there. You cannot run something like GTA Online on a peer-to-peer server. It's just not possible. There's too many things that... Because like dedicated servers is kind of more like a buzzword than anything. You know, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Primarily really because like dedicated servers require you basically every time you go into like a building or something, it would have to be a different instance. It's just a whole mess. Maybe they will deter people from griefing with a very difficult wanted level to deal with. I think most people that are just full on just purely griefing to be griefing, they don't care. I personally am not a fan of like RDO and the blimps just not showing up. Because it just makes you feel like you're the only person playing in an online game. Now, I know there's a lot of GTA Online players out there who just are used to being in invite-only sessions and, you know, basically that's how they play their online game. But I'm a firm believer in the fact that having player blimps showing up on the map would just make it feel more alive. There's plenty of things that Rockstar can do about, like, you know, the griefing problem. One of those things being balance your vehicles and don't make something that is definitely overpowered for about... How many years was it again, chat? 2018 until when did they finally patch the Mark II? Oh yeah, 4 fucking years. And we're still not done with balancing things in GTA Online, but you know, griefing is something that people are going to do primarily because they want to be an asshole. And I think that's the most important thing to keep in mind. The way to deter people from griefing is either by having such severe penalties to griefing that it's in the player's, you know, disadvantage to be a dickhead, that they simply don't think it is worth it. Or you put things into place where people that do not want to be griefed will be able to protect themselves from being griefed. Neither of which is probably going to be a particularly good solution to it, for the simple reason that if you do the first route, what you end up having people who want to engage into just regular freedom combat because that's something that a large portion of the player base just simply enjoys doing, or just wants to do like the odd kill here and there. Because what will end up happening there is that you might end up punishing, like, you know, just the good players who have, you know, just want to have a bit of fun, versus like the people who are just genuinely only there to be a dickhead. Whereas if you do the flip side, what you end up with is, I guess, I don't know, recall exactly how the defense mode works, but even that can get exploited by griefers. And I think the most important thing that Rockstar should be doing is making sure that when they add something to the game that it's balanced. You know, BST, the orbital cannon, insert Ohio man screaming here about that. The list goes on with all kinds of things and issues within GTA Online of just imbalanced vehicles. A Night Shark taking 20 rockets. Why? And the Presser Mark II being as small and nimble and hard to hit as it is. Why? The rockets took 4 years to nerf. And the only reason why they did is because, you know, they didn't have much else of an update and they needed something. You know, there's still a large list of vehicles that are either just unusable because they're just frankly too shit, or, you know, you have stuff that is like has no business being as powerful as it is. I think it's also very important to know and, you know, say that GTA Online and or GTA 6 Online, you're never gonna have the perfect balance, and that's gonna be going in any multiplayer game. But the least you can do is try to stay on top of it. Because I think if we're going to be completely honest about GTA Online, is that the way that they handled that game, for as long as they did, was just kind of like, we'll add stuff and then forget about it. See public lobbies as the PvP grounds, to be honest. The only thing that one can comfortably do when there's no low lives, like exploiting the game to get the most minor advantage, everything else falls apart. Like I said, like there is a large portion of online players that just genuinely really enjoy the whole PvP aspect. Because I don't think there's any other PvP kind of combat out there like GTA Online. I mean, you can spawn a tank and a jet and then continue on fighting, then your jet gets taken down and you go into something else. The list goes on. Like, I'm personally not a huge fan of it myself, as primarily I'm a PS5 player. And, well, frankly, GTA Online controls in terms of PvP combat just feel janky on controller. And if I try to do it on PC, I